When my grandmother passed away, I was left with a profound emptiness, a hollow space in my heart that felt as if it could never be filled. She'd been my one constant, the person who raised me after my parents left, both too caught up in their own lives to take care of a child. My grandmother stepped in, and together we made a home in her beautiful house on Willow Lane, a sprawling historic estate that was as warm as she was. She filled the house with love, laughter, and a deep, enduring resilience. And when she left it to me, her only granddaughter. I inherited the house on Willow Lane, along with a lifetime of her memories and her undying spirit. It felt like she was passing me a torch, entrusting me with everything she had built, with every story she had shared. In that house, I felt I still had her, that her love was stitched into every corner, every creak of the floorboards, every echo in the empty hallways. But along with the house, a storm was brewing, a storm I hadn't seen coming. Moving into the house alone was like stepping into another life. I'd lived there as a child, but returning as an adult, I was now responsible for it, for preserving it as my grandmother would have wanted. I spent the first few days walking through each room, feeling her presence everywhere. Each room held its own stories, from the kitchen where she used to bake the most wonderful pies to the library where she spent hours reading her favorite books. This house, to anyone else, was just a structure, but to me, it was her legacy, a piece of her I could keep forever. It wasn't long before Ethan began to show signs of interest. We'd been dating for a while, and he had always been charming, thoughtful, and attentive. His sudden fascination with the house felt, at first, like a natural extension of his curiosity about me. But soon his questions about my grandmother's house took on a different tone, a tone that felt more possessive than endearing. I brushed it off, thinking I was reading too much into things. It was only natural, I told myself. Ethan was in real estate after all, and perhaps he just saw the house as an investment, a valuable asset. But the part of me that was raised by my grandmother, the part of me that held the house sacred, felt a pang of unease. One evening, I found him in the study, flipping through some of my grandmother's documents. He didn't seem to notice me at first. His eyes scanned the pages with such intensity that for a moment, he didn't even hear me approach. "Ethan, what are you doing?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light. He looked up, almost startled. "Oh, Lena, just curious. You know, it's an incredible property. You must realize what an asset you've inherited here, right?" The way he said it, an asset, sent a shiver through me. This wasn't just an asset. This was my grandmother's home. But I forced a smile and nodded, trying to brush off the strange feeling brewing in my chest. After all, this was Ethan, my Ethan, the person who'd been there through so many ups and downs. I reminded myself that I was being paranoid. But that was just the beginning. As the weeks went on, Ethan began bringing his family around more often. I'd met them a few times, of course, during holidays or birthdays, but they'd never taken much interest in me before. Now, though, they were always there, always admiring the house, always lingering just a little too long. It was Helen, his mother, who made her intentions the clearest. "You've really inherited a gem, Lena," she said one evening as she gazed around the living room with barely concealed greed. Her voice dripped with thinly veiled envy, a hunger I couldn't ignore. She ran her hand over the mantel, examining the family photos I had placed there. My grandmother's legacy, her love for her home and family encapsulated in each frame. I felt a surge of protectiveness rise within me. "It's more than a house to me, Helen. It's everything my grandmother worked for. It's her memory, her life." Helen looked at me, her expression softening just a fraction, but her eyes held a glint of something darker. "Of course, dear," she murmured, but I could tell she didn't understand, or worse, she didn't care. From then on, they came around almost every weekend, lingering longer each time. I find Helen snooping through the upstairs rooms, just admiring the craftsmanship, she'd say. Abby, Ethan's sister, would sit in the kitchen, eyeing the china that had belonged to my grandmother as if mentally cataloging each piece. It made my skin crawl. The invasion happened so abruptly that I barely had time to react. One afternoon, I returned from running errands to find Helen and Abby in the living room, flipping through a folder of paperwork. The sight of them sitting there, acting as if they owned the place, made me feel nauseous. Ethan stood by the doorway, a look of resignation on his face. He looked down when I met his eyes, and I knew immediately that something was terribly, terribly wrong. "Lena," Helen said in a voice that was all too calm, We've come to an arrangement. It's for the best, really. You're young, and maintaining a house like this, well, it's a big responsibility. We've discussed it with Ethan, and we believe that transferring the house to his name would be in everyone's best interest. I was stunned, words failing me. It felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. This was my home, my grandmother's legacy, and here they were, talking as if they had the right to take it from me. Are you serious? I finally managed to ask, my voice barely above a whisper. You can't just take my home. Abby smirked, a look of triumph flashing in her eyes. Oh, but we're family, Lena. We're just here to help. Think of this as consolidation. My hands trembled as I looked at Ethan, hoping he would defend me, that he would put a stop to this madness. But he said nothing, his silence louder than any betrayal. That night, after they finally left, I locked every door and sat in a living room. The paperwork they'd shoved into my hands scattered around me like a cruel joke. I felt a sense of helplessness wash over me, a crushing wave of despair. How could they do this to me? How could Ethan allow this? I thought I knew him. I thought I could trust him. But I couldn't sit idly by and let them take everything my grandmother had worked for. I knew I had to fight back. She wouldn't have wanted me to give up without a battle. The next morning, I called a lawyer, Mr. Jacobs, an old family friend who had helped my grandmother with her estate. He listened patiently as I told him everything, his voice calm and reassuring when he finally spoke. Lena, don't worry. If you have the documentation of ownership, we can fight this. It's not as simple as they're making it out to be. Gather every piece of paperwork you have, wills, deeds, anything that proves the house is yours. His words ignited a small spark of hope in me. I spent days poring over every file, every letter, every scrap of paper that held even a hint of my grandmother's claim to this house. I found old property deeds, tax records, and most importantly, her will, explicitly stating that the house was to be mine. Every document I gathered felt like a shield, each page adding to my armor. The first court hearing was surreal. I sat across from Helen and Abby, their smug smiles taunting me as if they were certain they'd win. Ethan was there too, but he didn't even look at me. His face was a mask of indifference, his once warm eyes cold and distant. I presented my case, my hands shaking as I spoke about my grandmother's wishes, about how this house was her legacy, about how it was more than just a property, it was my home. The judge listened intently, and at the end of it all, I saw a flicker of understanding in his gaze. He granted me a temporary restraining order, barring them from the property. The relief was overwhelming, but I knew this was only the beginning. After the restraining order was issued, things quieted down for a short while. But Ethan's family wasn't done. They started showing up outside the house, lurking just beyond the property line, sometimes shouting insults or threats, their anger growing with each passing day. One evening, I heard a loud banging on the front door. I opened it cautiously, only to find Helen standing there, her face twisted in rage. You think you've won, Lena? She spat, her voice shaking with fury. You don't deserve that house. It should be ours. You're just a selfish, ungrateful child. Her words stung, but I refused to back down. I stood tall, my voice steady as I replied, This house is my grandmother's legacy. It's my home, and you're not welcome here. After months of fighting, of late-night research, and seemingly endless court appearances, the legal battle finally came to an end. The judge ruled in my favor, confirming my sole ownership of the property and barring Ethan's family from ever coming near it again. The weight that lifted from my shoulders was indescribable. The house was finally mine, free from their grasp, from their greed. As I walked through each room, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. This wasn't just a house. It was a testament to my strength, to my resilience, to everything my grandmother had taught me. Slowly, I redecorated, breathing new life into the home. I painted the walls, rearranged the furniture, filled it with new memories, new hopes. And as I stood in the living room, looking out over the willow trees that lined the yard, I felt her presence beside me, proud and unwavering. In that moment, I knew I had done her proud. I had protected her legacy, and in doing so, I had found my own strength. This was my home, and it always would be.